Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Buy Your Side podcast, the property podcast to help you make smarter property buying decisions. Now, if you've been listening to the episodes over the past time, you would know that I'm always on the lookout for helping you get into the property market by creative solutions, if you like. And recently, I was reading an article in the Australian Financial Review, and it was talking about Hope Housing. And Hope Housing is a co-investment solution that's solving housing affordability for essential workers. Now, if you are an essential worker, you might want to take a listen to this episode because I am very excited to have Allyson Bailie, who is the head of marketing and operations with me today, to explain what Hope Housing does and how it can help you get on the property ladder quicker. So, without further ado, Ali, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you.
Now, I only came across it in the last couple of months or so, but I know Hope Housing has been going for a while. Could you tell me about how Hope Housing came about and what has been its sort of its process till today?
Yep. So Hope was founded by two Tims. And the first Tim Sims, he is our financial backer. He's the founder and managing director at Pacific Equity Partners, which is one of Australia's largest private equity fund managers. He has a deep passion for helping people through his philanthropic initiatives. And one of those initiatives is Hope Housing. The second founding Tim is Tim Buskins, and Tim Buskins is actually the CEO of Hope Housing. But he he came to the table with a very strong background in superannuation and also private equity.
Right.
Um, they came together. I mean, they'd worked previously, but back in 2018, they came together and they could clearly see that housing affordability was becoming a really big problem for essential workers.
Yeah.
They were increasingly being priced out of communities that needed them, and they were being forced to move to the outer rings of Sydney
Yeah.
and do a lot of travel. So that's why they came together and said, look, we've got to try and solve this. How are we going to do it? And,
Yeah.
they looked around the world for various models and came back with a shared equity solution. So, I mean, shared equity or co-investing it's new in Australia, but it's not something new around the world. So it's something that's being done in Canada and the US and also the UK, but it's still
Yeah.
relatively new here in Australia.
Yeah. And so I love data. So how many so since your inception, how many successful co-purchases have you actually had? I mean, how many essential workers can you help on a yearly basis, and are you hoping to help on a yearly
Mm.
basis?
Yeah. So I mentioned before that Tim started work on this in 2018. It took a while to get out of the ground because it's just such a new idea.
Mm,
But we have been in operation since October last year. So in the last 12 months, or a little bit over 12 months, we've been able to successfully buy 14 homes, which has helped 22 essential workers.
great.
So yeah, so it's exciting and it's great to see, we're getting some track record and we're proving that our model works. We're proving that there's a demand for it and that essential workers really want this sort of help.
Yeah. And so is there sort of a standard uh shared equity process, or is it dependent on the essential worker and how much they bring to the table? Like, do you work with them on a one-on-one basis?
We are like a wholesaler. So one thing that Tim and Tim never wanted to do was disrupt the way people go about financing homes. So right now they go to the bank and they look to see what sort of mortgage they can get together with their deposit. And so we didn't want to disrupt that process. So we sort of they still go to the bank, and we've partnered with Police Bank, a mutual that operates Australia wide, but was
Yeah.
happy to work with us while we started our pilot in the Sydney region. And that's another important point. We have just kicked off in the Greater Sydney region, so we're not buying houses all over Australia yet. We've
Okay.
sort of
Yeah.
focusing in on that Sydney area.
Yeah.
Um, so we've partnered with police banks. So they go into the bank, they see if they, you still have to have a deposit. So minimum 2.5% deposit for our solution. You still need to
Okay.
be able to service a home loan. And then we come on top as the co-investor, and we will contribute anywhere between 30 and 50% of the purchase price of the property. So
30 to
we've given
50%.
lenders the tools that they need to be able to calculate what that co-investment from Hope is going to be. And
Yeah.
then, then they get their home loan approval, conditional approval, together with a conditional approval and a co-investment from Hope, together
Yeah.
with their deposit. That's how much they can go out and purchase a house for.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. And so they come to you, and I mean, then they go out and find a property.
Yep.
Um, are there any? Do you get a say into what they buy, where they buy, the type of property they buy? Do you guide them? Do you give them education?
Yep.
Because for me, that's what this podcast is all about. It's all about education, and you just don't know what you don't know,
Yep.
particularly first home buyers. It's the wild, wild west out there. Um,
Absolutely. And that's, I guess, that's our value proposition to essential workers, because
yeah.
sort of until now they've had build to rent solutions where, a big block of units have been put up, and there's like a certain percentage that are sort of put aside for essential workers to be able to sort of
Mm,
rent. Our value proposition is obviously home ownership, but also you choose where you want to live.
yeah.
And so, obviously, it's really, really important that we educate our home buyers to
Yeah.
make sure they buy well, because they're using our investors' funds as potentially half of the value of the property that they're going to buy. So it's
Yeah.
absolutely crucial. So one of the big things that we built as part of, creating Hope was our asset due diligence process. So not only do we educate home buyers on the sorts of properties that we like and don't like, things to watch out for, things that,
Yeah.
things that are good to have, things
Red
that are not so good
flags.
to have. Yeah, red
Yeah.
flags. Absolutely. We've also built an investment committee that's got a whole range of different, check boxes that need to be ticked before we say, yep, we're happy to
Yeah.
co-invest in a particular property.
Yeah.
We do things like we've partnered with Opteon, one of Australia's biggest valuation firms, to help us with
Okay.
the pre-purchase valuation. And this was the thing that I alluded to earlier. It took us a little while to get this out of the ground, because we've really challenged the way people, have done business previously. There weren't too many valuation firms out there that were happy to provide a pre-purchase valuation
Mm,
for a fund manager. So, they've always done
yeah.
post-purchase valuations for lenders.
Yeah.
For banks,
Yeah.
but never a pre-purchase for a fund manager. So it's really a different way of thinking, and we really needed partners to come on board that believed in what we were doing and wanted to help solve the issue
Yeah.
and come up with a solution. So, valuations are really pre-purchase valuations are a really important part of our due diligence. That is what actually sets maximum purchase price, because our investors are always saying, oh, you put in an extra 50%, you're just going to increase property prices. People are going to be, they're going to have their pockets open and they're willing to pay more. But in actual fact, in practice, what we're seeing is, even with Hope's co-investment, the behaviours of home buyers doesn't really change. They still want a good, but they still want a good price for a property. So
Yes.
because they're putting in half, they have to
Of
pay
course.
a deposit and a home loan. So you know we didn't sort of know that behavior was going to occur, but it has. But also we've got a great backstop in that we always put a cap on the purchase price
Yeah.
of a property.
That's good.
Um,
I mean, I guess that also comes that shows that your education is working, because people who are flying blind are just like throwing up that paddle at auction. I've seen it many times, but the more you educate your co-investors, your essential workers, that they become much more aware of what it is, the actual process of, and the gravity of what it is that they're doing, and that they're using partially your investment to do so. I think it's, yeah, it makes sense that they don't then overpay, and that you guys provide evaluation up front is crucial. um
the
are
other
there are there pardon?
Oh, it's all good, Michelle. You carry on. Sorry.
We can cut that little bit out. Um, now, Hope Housing has backers and people who believe in this. So where do you guys get your investors from then? Is this because it's something new? I'm not familiar with this arena at all, but it really piques my interest because say you're the shoe is on the other foot. If there's someone out there who really thinks this is a fantastic scheme, which I think it is, allowing more essential workers to own their own property. Um, where do you find your funding?
Yep. So Hope was built in that it was meant to be targeting institutional investors, like the big Australian super funds. But what we found is because shared equity and co-investing is such a new concept in Australia, the super funds are a little risk adverse, and so they want to see track record. They want to see proof that this thing works before they jump on board and pile in lots and lots of money.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of engagement from super funds. They're very interested. They're sitting back and watching. But what we're finding is right now, what's working well for us is, family foundations, philanthropic investors, and even owners of self-managed super funds. Now, these are always smaller licks of money, which is,
Yeah.
but they all count and they all make a difference. It's just that we're
Yeah.
not able to help as many people as what we could if a big super fund decided
Yeah.
to invest in Hope. But, over time,
Yeah.
we'll build up that track record. The super funds might start, moving away from rental solutions and move
Yeah.
into ownership solutions because,
Yeah.
the Aussie dream of home ownership hasn't died. We don't want, whole big segments of society just being, renters for their entire life because then that becomes a problem for the super funds later on down the track when they go to retire.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, look, super funds are slow moving beasts, aren't they? And the whole financial industry is a slow moving beast. So I guess it's a matter of time. The more you show what it actually the benefits are for them as much as the people they're helping, it will be a
Well,
matter of
it's
time
helping
because
their members, helping their members
exactly,
to
exactly, yeah,
achieve what they want
exactly,
to achieve. Yeah, which is home ownership. But
yeah,
it'll
absolutely.
happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so now in New South Wales, there's always different, grants and things available from the New South Wales government to help first home buyers, to help, particular segments of, the property buying groups to get that first rung on the ladder. At the moment, we've got the shared equity home buyer helper, which is quite a mouthful, which is supporting and creating opportunities for lower income single parents, older singles, first home buyers to live in their own home. Is Hope similar to that? I mean, obviously that you're targeting essential workers specifically, but
Mm.
is the setup similar to that?
Yeah, I mean, they're both shared equity solutions,
Mm,
but I guess some of the eligibility criteria is a little bit different in that um, we don't have the same income caps. We actually have no income caps for eligibility in
okay.
Hope, whereas the
Yeah.
government has set eligibility caps
Mm,
on theirs,
they do. Yeah.
which means that we're definitely targeting maybe a slightly different audience. So, whereas the government solution might be for early career essential workers, Hope is
Yeah.
definitely that sort of mid career.
Yeah.
People who have gone from being a single person to a married person to all of a sudden having a family, but still
Yeah.
living in a 2 bedroom unit, but never having the ability to sort of move out of that because they just don't
Yeah.
have the affordability to do it. So we're targeting that group.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also,
That's
I
great actually, Ali, because we find that that next step is potentially even harder. But as particularly with the unit prices and the house prices, the gap is getting wider and wider. And what even from my side as a buyer's agent, I'm finding never before have I had to help families with children move into the next strata unit as opposed to going from strata to torrents titled. They can't bridge that gap anymore, so they're kind of stuck. So they're going from 2 bedroom to 3 bedroom apartments, for example, or a townhouse, a strata titled townhouse. So for you guys to be able to help that tier that is really struggling is actually great because it's actually an additional help, not just the same as the shared equity home buyer.
Mm,
Now,
yeah.
with do you? I know that with the shared equity home buyer, they have a different kind of contribution depending on whether it's a new dwelling or whether it's an established property. Do you make that differentiation too, or?
Yeah, I can tell you we don't do new dwellings. So it has to be
Ooh,
an existing. It has to be an
yeah.
existing property. So
Mm.
when and it needs to. We don't do any off the plan. We want like established properties. So it's got a track record as well. So
Oh my God, I love that. I love that even more now because I am such an advocate for people to understand the risks of new builds and nearly new builds. There are huge risks involved in that. So I love that you're going for established. Well, I mean that does make it harder, of course, because there's a lot of demand.
there is.
Demand is vastly outstripping
we
supply.
definitely we definitely have a lot more success with off market properties and also just private treaty as opposed to
Yeah.
auction. So before,
Mm,
when I said that we had we've secured 14 properties, well, we've actually reviewed like more than 50 to get those
of course.
14. So
Yeah.
we've been outbid at auctions, and we've actually said no to a few for various reasons that have come out
Yeah.
of our due diligence processes and stuff.
Mm. And
But
this
yeah,
is this your client? So is this do you call them clients? Is that your
We call
current
them home buyers
home
before
buyers?
as
Do
a
your home
potential.
buyers find the off markets, or do they get help with that? Or
Yeah. So it is a real challenge. The people that we are helping have got low deposits or not enough savings, so they are having to do a lot of the groundwork themselves. Door knocking,
yeah,
real estate agents saying, "Oh, what do you? This is what I'm after. This is how much money I've got. Have you got anything coming up? Do you know
yeah,
anyone that wants to sell?" So they
it's a
are
grind. Yeah.
yeah, they are, unfortunately. They're pretty cash poor, so we haven't actually had a buyer that's used a buyer's agent yet. But
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's. I mean, look, I think that. A buyer's agent is obviously an investment into the process, and I'm very much aware that not everyone is in that position.
mm,
But I think the fact that you are bringing a piece of education to the table as well as money is already a huge, advantage for them. Because most first home buyers, without a buyer's agent, they really are just going on what their parents tell them or what they read in the media, or and hopefully listening to this podcast too. But
so
they
too.
really need that piece of education because that gives them empowerment to go, okay, no, I know that this is not the way it should be, or this is what I need to look out for, or this is the way I should strategize at auction, etc., etc.
Yeah.
um
I mean, they're
now
experts at doing their jobs. They're not experts at buying houses. So
No, well, that's exactly right. That's
yeah.
it's taken me a long time to know what I know for sure, and I know that all my clients are experts at what they do, and
The
I
other
have absolutely no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. I was going to say the other really big difference between our model and the government model is, they also have purchase price. They have, home property value limits as well. So they'll only enter into
Yes.
properties that are, I think $900,000 if you're a single and $1.2 million if you're a couple. We don't have any of those sorts of limits. I mean, we have a limit, but it's $2 million. So it definitely
Yeah.
gets you into the inner rings of Sydney as opposed to pushing you to the outer rings, because our value proposition is keeping essential workers within
Yeah.
the communities that they serve. Because that whole that commute on top of a 12-hour
Mm,
shift is
yeah.
huge. So,
Well, and
that's
it's
another
interesting.
difference.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because it was actually a report that came out just the other day, where it talked about how many and where had the shared equity home buyer actually helped people, and it was nowhere near really the inner west or anything like that. It was really
Mm,
at least 20 kilometers away. And of course, those people need help too. But for you guys, that is great that you don't have that cap because literally, what can you buy for $1 million nowadays, or 900K
mm,
within that inner ring, the 10K radius to the CBD,
mm.
which is where. particularly, like you said, you've done a 12-hour day. You don't want to add then another hour to your commute to either end.
Yep.
Um,
And that's
absolutely.
just it. And these people, they can't use the public transport because they work their odd hours, so they have to drive themselves. And I've spoken to a nurse who was having to drive between Sydney and Newcastle, and feeling that she was having like little naps along the way.
That's
It's
that's not
very
only crazy but
unhealthy.
also slightly dangerous.
Yeah. Yes.
I remember in my younger years, I used to work for British Airways, and I was a purser and a cabin crew member, and I used to do long haul flights, and
Mm.
I was also flipping properties in Lincolnshire, which was about a 2.5 hour drive, and I would come off a flight just off Hong Kong, for example, having worked an 18-hour day, and then
Mm.
drive and drive in the car. I mean, I don't know how I did that, and that
Yep.
wasn't as regular as these essential workers have to get into work. So, yeah, no,
Mm.
this is a much better solution. Now, tell me, once they've bought the property, you obviously own a share in the property. Is there a is the idea then that they pay off their mortgage, their part, and then help pay your part off as well, or do you intend to keep it until they sell it down the
Yep.
track? And is there then a shared profit share, if you like?
Yep. We definitely profit share. So if we've bought 50% up front and they haven't bought out any of our share along the way when they go to sell, whatever they sell it for,
Yeah,
we share in the capital gains,
yeah,
50-50. But yes, we definitely will be. Obviously, we're only 12 months in, but there's an
mm,
education piece that needs to come about. Educating essential workers on the importance of building up their equity share in the property, so that they can have access to the capital gains.
yeah,
Um, we definitely, obviously, they need to pay off their home loan, and that would be their number one priority.
yeah.
But buying out hope along the way is also a really important aspect as well. But we can't force people to do that.
No,
It's all just going to be through education. If they get a pay rise, or if they get a windfall, or
yeah,
really important to educate them on the importance of buying out hope, because that turns our money over, which means that we can then
yeah,
reinvest that money into buying another house for another essential working family. So
yeah, absolutely. And then if they get to keep, more of that capital growth when they do sell, that gives them that next leg up in
yep,
in their next purchase, and hopefully they can do it by themselves by then.
yep,
um
that's what we
yeah,
hope.
yeah, that's excellent. Well, I mean, do you have a cap on how many people you're hoping to help in the coming year, 2024?
So completely uncapped. We've developed processes and we've got systems that will scale. So we're ready to take on the world, but we're hamstrung at the moment by by investors. So the number of
Yeah,
people that are coming on board and investing funds. But we've developed great systems and processes that can we can probably get 30 to 40 essential workers into homes per month. So, and obviously we've got
wow,
a team of people working to try and raise the capital we need to be able to do that.
yeah,
But yeah, we built it first, and now we're
yes,
waiting for the funds to come through. So, but we've tested everything. Everything works. We've bought these 14 homes. We've helped 22 essential workers. We know it works. We know
yeah,
there's demand. We've got like more than 2,000 people on our wait list. Um, Back in October,
wow,
we had a current affair approach us off the
yeah.
back of a Australian Financial Review article that they'd seen, and since then we've been absolutely inundated with people just saying like, you're our dream come true. Like,
Yes,
when can we have a turn? When's it our turn?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so I mean, we've built a great back end system, and we're just now waiting for the investors to jump on board, or
Are
more
you
investors to jump on board.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I mean, you've got 2,000 people on the wait list. Are you still allowing people to be added at the to the end of the wait list, or have you closed your wait list for now?
Yeah, it's probably be a good idea to close the wait list, but we just keep
No, no,
engaging
don't
you
do that. Don't do that just yet because I need my listeners to jump on your wait list.
guys. I know the wait list is still open, and we're developing some really good communications with those people, good dialogue. They're
Yeah,
sharing information about their situation that helps us to build out our case with investors,
yeah,
and we're keeping them up to date with investor activity. So,
brilliant.
we've obviously, for all the money that we've gotten in so far, we've allocated that to essential workers. So we still have a handful of essential workers that are approved out there looking for homes right now. They
Yeah.
just haven't found the right one. But yeah, so yeah, as soon as we get more investment funds, we'll be able to open the gates again.
Yeah, excellent. So, in the meantime, if you are such a person and Hope Housing has piqued your interest, jump on the web, the World Wide Web, hopehousing.com.au. That's probably the best way to get in touch with you guys, Ali, right? Just jump on the website.
Absolutely, yes. We've got lots of
Yeah,
information there. There's a form that you can fill in to put your name down on the wait list.
yeah.
You can send us an
And
email if you.
likewise, for those investors out there who are thinking this is a good idea, and it is a good idea, to make a difference with the money that you want to invest with. There is actually a tab on hopehousing.com.au specifically for investors. Reach out to them and make a difference because I think this is the way forward for more essential workers out there to get into the property market and have that security that simply the rental market doesn't afford you, and have a
Well,
have
you've got
a have a
homeowners in
decent
your.
life between your work shifts as well. What did you
Mm.
say, Ali?
I was going to say you've got homeowners in the home as opposed to renters in the home. So
Absolutely,
there's a
absolutely.
lot of proof out there that homes that people own go for more than homes that people have rented.
Well, yeah, there is actually research that home owned properties actually perform better than
Mm.
investor owned properties,
You put
which is
that so
very
much better to
interesting.
me. Yeah.
Yes. But it's true though, and I always say this to my investor clients that when we are looking for properties to purchase, we put our owner occupier hat on, and because tenants, it is their home, so it's got to have the same checklist as an investment property should have, and vice versa. If you're a homeowner, you've got to put on your thinking hat as an investor on, is
Mm.
this a good location quality? Does it have good internal light? Is it not a cave?
Mm.
It's not the castle surrounded by high density, etc., etc. Does it have amenities? There's so many things that it needs to tick. But lucky for the people who work with Hope Housing, they do get that piece of education, which is why, as an investor, you're going to get a better outcome.
Mm.
Uh, the way I see it.
Mm.
Ali, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you guys are extremely busy right now, but thank you so much for taking the time to explain Hope Housing to me and everyone listening. Um, I wish you all the greatest success and thanks again.
Thanks, Michelle. It's lovely to talk to you
Thank
and
you.
to your listeners as well. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for the
you.
opportunity.
Thank you very much. Listen, if you have enjoyed this episode and you want to know more about Hope Housing, the website is hopehousing.com.au. You can check out all the information on there. Um, if you have any questions for me, specifically that you want me to tackle anything and everything to do with property, do get in touch with the email is hello@buyyourside.com.au. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time.